Ram Hari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hari Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Ram. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshadarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. I believe today we are reading from text 11 of the 8th chapter of the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll read the text a couple of times and then devotees can chant. Text 11. Shri Hiranyakashipu Uvacha Vyaktam Tvam Martukamosi Yoti Matram Vikathyase Mumurshunam Hi Mandatman Anusurviklavagira Vyaktam Tvam Martukamosi Yoti Matram Vikathyase Mumurshunam Hi Mandatman Anusurviklavagira Vyaktam Tvam Martukamosi Yoti Matram Vikathyase Mumurshunam Hi Mandatman Anusyurviklavagira. Devotees would like to chant.
Shri Hiranyakashipu Uvacha Vyaktam Tvam Martukamosi Yoti Matram Vikatase Mumursunam Himandatmam Manusur Viklavagiraha.
Anyone else? Okay. I'll read the word for word translation and then the translation. Shri Hiranyakashipu Uvacha. The blessed Hiranyakashipu said, Vyaktam, evidently, Tvam, you, Martukama, desires of death, Asi, or Yah, one who, Atimatram, without limit, Vikathase, or boasting, as if you had conquered your senses, whereas your father could not do so. Mumurshunam, of persons who are about to meet immediate death. He, indeed, Manda Atman, O unintelligent rascal, Nanu, certainly, Syuhu, become, Viklavaha, confused, Giraha, the words. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation first. Hiranyakashipu replied, "You rascal, you are trying to minimize my value, as if you are better than me at controlling the senses. This is over-intelligent. I can therefore understand that you desire to die at my hands. For this kind of nonsensical talk is indulged in by those about to die." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is said in Hitopadesha, Upadesho hi murkhanam prakopaya nashantaye. If good instructions are given to a foolish person, he does not take advantage of them, but becomes more and more angry. Prahlad Maharaj's authorized instructions to his father were not accepted by Hiranyakashipu as truth. Instead, Hiranyakashipu became increasingly angry at his great son, who was a pure devotee. This kind of difficulty always exists when a devotee preaches Krishna consciousness to persons like Hiranyakashipu, who are interested in money and women. The word Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu refers to cushions or good bedding. Moreover, a father does not like to be instructed by his son, especially if the father is a demon. Prahlad Maharaj's Vaishnava preaching to his demonic father was indirectly effective, for because of Hiranyakashipu's excessive jealousy of Krishna and his devotee, he was inviting Narasimhadev to kill him very quickly. Thus, he was expediting his being killed by the Lord himself. Although Hiranyakashipu was a demon, he is described here by the added word Shri. Why? The answer is that fortunately, he had such a great devotee son as Prahlad Maharaj. And although he was a demon, he would attain salvation and return home back to Godhead. So I'll read the translation once again for context. Hiranyakashipu replied, "You rascal, you are trying to minimize my value, as if you are better than me at controlling the senses. This is over-intelligent. I can therefore understand that you desire to die at my hands. For this kind of nonsensical talk is indulgent by those who are about to die." So as you've been reading the context of this verses, just previously Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, "What gives you so much strength? From where do you get this power to defy me? Because the whole world trembles. The moment I raise my eyebrows, everybody's just trembling. But somehow you seem unaffected. You're not afraid of me. You're not afraid of my power and what I can do. Whereas even the great demigods like Indra and Chandra are afraid of me. Nobody dares to even speak a word against me, let alone defy me." And if you remember, Hiranyakashipu had the ability that just by his raising of his eyebrow, he could change the weather. If he thought the weather was not conducive for his enjoyment, he could change it. He would make the earth produce all kinds of food grains and fruit and everything else, and he would make the oceans produce all kinds of jewels and pearls, and whatever he desired was just available to him, because the entire cosmic manifestation, except Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu himself, everybody else was under his control. So he was such a powerful personality that everything was under his control. But for The simple reason that he could not control his 5-year-old son, who was not listening to him or not subservient to him, that caused so much anxiety for Hiranyakashipu. And it's described in the previous verses and sections that he thought Prahlad Maharaj was like a dog's tail that could never be straightened. No matter how long you would keep a dog's tail in a pipe, that would you would think that might straighten the dog's tail, but as soon as you take the little pipe out, the dog's tail gets curved again. So he gave this example that you like a dog's tail. No matter how long I try, you still are going to be crooked. You're not going to be straightened. So Hiranyakashipu was essentially exasperated. He tried so many ways to end Prahlad Maharaj. He tried instructions from his teachers, special instructions. He tried everything, but nothing worked. And that got him to a point where he was completely exasperated. He just didn't really have anything else left in terms of how he could control his son. So he asked his son, from where did you get this power? And Prahlad Maharaj told him that the source of your power is the source of my power too. And the source of everyone's power, who's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aham sarvasya prabho matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna says in the Gita, 10th chapter, 8th verse. This is the beginning of the Chatushloki Gita, the 4 essential verses of the Gita. And Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabho. Aham is first person singular, I. Sarvasya, of everything. Prabhava, Prabhu. So I'm the Lord of everything. So there's no exceptions. There's no like asterisks at the end of that phrase where uh, I'm the Lord of everything, asterisks, and then you have a footnote that says, except these 25 things. But Krishna doesn't have any such asterisks. He just basically says, Aham sarvasya prabhu. And then mattaha. Mattaha is from me. Sarvam, everything. Pravartate, emanates, gets generated. So basically, Krishna in the first line of this verse is just making it very clear that he is the supreme lord of everything. Material planets, spiritual planets, any other planets in the middle, like the higher planets, like the heavenly planets from the material realm, the middle planets, like the earthly planets, and the lower planets, like the hellish planets, including Sutala, Atala, Patala, all these other planets where different living entities live. He is the Lord of everything, no exceptions. He is the master of every living entity, whether you're a devotee, whether you're a demon, whether you're atheist or a theist, it doesn't matter. Whether you're a Vaishnava or an impersonalist, it does not matter. All living entities, whether you're human or non-human, doesn't matter. So he's the Lord of everybody and everything. He makes that very clear in that first phrase. Aham sarvasya prabhava. Matta sarvam pravartate. Everything emanates from the Lord. Just like in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam verses, the first phrase of the first verse of Chatushloki Bhagavatam, those of you who know, is Aham eva asam eva agre. I existed before everything else. Supreme Lord is the source of everything. And all of us know this verse from the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, first verse. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. This last phrase, Sarva Karana Karana, is the ultimate cause of all causes. And similarly, in the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, it begins with Janmadhyasya Yataha. Janma Adi. Janma means birth. Adi means before. Yasya Yataha. So one who existed before everything else existed. He's the supreme cause of all causes. So Krishna very clearly says he's the Lord of everything. And so he's the source of all power. And that's what Prahlad Maharaj tells Hiranyakashipu, which angers Hiranyakashipu even more. And so in this verse he says You rascal, you're trying to minimize my value. As if you're better than me at controlling senses. Because just in the last verse, Hiranyakashipu was instructed by Prahlad Maharaj that why do you think anybody's your enemy? Nobody's your enemy. The only enemy we have are the six enemies. And if you can control those six enemies, they have no other enemies. The six enemies that Prahlad Maharaj refers to are the six senses, which includes the mind. Mana shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati, Krishna says. Mana, mind, shashtani indriyani. Shashta means six. So he says the six senses which include the mind. We know about the five senses that everybody speaks about, right? The sense of touch, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of taste, right? And sense of hearing. These five senses plus mind. Mana shashtani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So we are struggling very hard for existence with these six senses, which includes the mind. So Prahlad Maharaj tells them that if you can control these six senses, you have no enemies. But you're thinking you have enemies. That's the problem. And which is in response to that, Hiranyakashipu is so upset and he says, this is over intelligent. So I can therefore understand your desire to die at my hands. Because you're trying to instruct me. And Srila Prabhupada refers to Hitopadesha in the purport. Hitopadesha or Hita means for the benefit. Upadesha means instruction. Like you have Upadeshamrita, nectar of instruction. So Upadesha literally means instruction or some kind of order. So Hitopadesha means instructions that are for our benefit. And Hitopadesha are not considered part of Vedas. They are not Shastra. But they are considered Upashastra, which are essentially additional texts that have been compiled, which give good instructions. So similarly, like Srila Prabhupada always, a lot of times will quote Chanakya Niti. Chanakya was a Brahmana advisor in the kingdom of Chandragupta Maurya. This was a couple thousand, I think 1,000 years ago or so. So he was his advisor. And so this is not Shastra, this is not scripture, but Chanakya wrote a lot of these instructions which are generally considered valuable for people to understand and live their lives with. So Hitopadesha is similar. It's not exactly scripture, but these are instructions that give common codes of morality, etc. And in Upadeshamitra, the Hitopadesha, there's a phrase which Srila Prabhupada quotes that Upadesho hi murkhanam prakopaya na shanteye. So if you give instructions to a murkha or a foolish person, then that only angers that person. It doesn't make that person peaceful. There are many similar instructions. There's one instruction that I'll loosely translate that speaks about a similarity between a wicked or cruel person and coal. And that instruction says a piece of lump of coal is similar to a wicked or cruel person. That whether the wicked person is happy or unhappy, either way, he will only cause you destruction. So associating with trying to appease the cruel or wicked person doesn't create any benefit. Because if the person is happy, also he'll create disturbance for you. If he's unhappy, also will create disturbance for you. Similar like coal. If coal is hot, it's burning, and you hold it in your hands, it'll burn your hands. And if the coal is cold and you hold it in your hands, it'll make your hands black. So just like coal, whether it's hot or cold, causes some sort of problem. Similarly, a wicked person. So these are some of these instructions that are in the Upashastras that Srila Prabhupada would often quote because they're codes of morality. And so Srila Prabhupada says that Prahlad Maharaj's authorized instructions to his father were not accepted. And so the question that is being addressed here is that Hiranyakashipu was not receptive or open to hearing any instructions. They were actually for his benefit. It was not like Prahlad Maharaj was telling him to do things that were contrary to the benefit of Hiranyakashipu. They were actually for the benefit of Hiranyakashipu. There's a verse in the previous chapters which is very famous. Srila Prabhupada will often quote this verse. Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Mitobhipadyeta Grapratanam Adanta Gobi Rishatantam Mishram Punascharvita Charvananam. So this verse Srila Prabhupada would quote very often. He would, at least the last phrase, he would quote a lot. The Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova. And this phrase is actually very interesting when you analyze this first line of this verse. Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova. So it says that for a person who is too materially engrossed and influenced by the modes of material nature very heavily, Matirna Krishna, Mati means your consciousness or your mind, will not get attached to Krishna. Na Krishna. Parata Swatova. By your own efforts, Swata. Parata means by instruction or effort of others, or a combination of both. And that's what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, that for a materially engrossed person, in the translation of that verse, he says that for a materially engrossed person, for a person heavily influenced by the modes of material nature, the inclination for accepting Krishna consciousness does not arise either by his own efforts or by the instruction or the efforts of others, or a combination of the two, because the mind is so closed to even accepting any instructions that doesn't matter what the instruction is for accepting Krishna consciousness, the mind is completely closed to it. It's like if you have to gather water in a pot, the pot has to be held right side up so that the water can be collected. But you may have the most sturdy pot, but if you hold it upside down, no matter how potent the water source, you will not collect any water. You can stand under the faucet or under the heavy thunder shower for an hour, still there will be no water in the pot because you're holding it upside down. Similarly, if a mind is completely closed to good instruction, doesn't matter who gives the instruction, you will not penetrate. It will not penetrate. But if you're slightly open, then it penetrates. So when Srila Prabhupada also, when he came to the West, then he was giving instructions. He was giving instructions to so many people. There were many people who may have heard Srila Prabhupada but didn't accept. But the few who accepted, the many who accepted, who may have previously had sinful lives and so on, but they opened their hearts just slightly to hear the words of a pure devotee, and it penetrated the heart. They could see the purity of the pure devotee of the Lord and the instructions of the pure devotee of the Lord. When it comes, it pierces the heart. It pierces all the misgivings and enters directly into the consciousness. And then we're able to see that this is really for our benefit. But that slight opening has to be there. It's like if you have, and this comes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada speaks about it, that this Bhakti Lata Bija, yeah, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bij. So a living entity is roaming around in this Brahmanda, in this creation, in so many life forms. But with the mercy of Guru and Krishna, Guru Krishna Prasade Paye, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of the devotional creeper of Bhakti, Bhakti Lata, is delivered to us. Now, this whole metaphor is continued by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he instructs Sanatana Goswami. He speaks about it, says that it's one thing to get the seed, but then you have to nurture it by having a fertile heart which can grow that Lakti Lata Bij. And you have to watch it from being eaten by wild animals and other things, and water it carefully with the chanting of the holy name and performing of bhakti. And it grows, and you have to also watch out for the weeds of pride and envy and other things that crop up so that the Bhakti Lata Bij can grow. So you may get the best quality seed, but if you plant that seed on hard rock, it's very difficult for something to sprout. because there's no anchor for that seed to take root. Roots cannot penetrate hard rock, right? Or completely arid sand. If you go and plant a very, very potent seed in the Arabian desert or some other desert, like the Californian desert, the Death Valley, where temperature is 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's no water, and it's just that's why it's called Death Valley. It's like just arid desert. You're not gonna sprout very well. It may make some effort, but then the harsh climate is just not gonna allow it to sprout. But if you take it to very fertile, like in our Gita Nagari farm, we have such fertile soil, and during the spring or early summer, you plant that seed, and there's watering and everything else, and then within a few weeks, you find that it's become a pretty big plant. So the conduciveness of our heart is such a huge factor in understanding good instruction. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about that. The difficulty exists because the devotee preaches Krishna consciousness to a person like Hiranyakashipu, whose mind is completely closed. And if you look at the personality of Hiranyakashipu, we can set aside the fact for a minute that Hiranyakashipu was performing Leela. Essentially, he's Jai, and he and his brother Hiranyaksha are Jai and Vijay from the spiritual world, as we learn in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So you set that aside for a second, but you just look at the personality of Hiranyakashipu. He was born of glorious parents. His father Kashyapa and mother Diti were practicing transcendentalists. They were not demons. They were practicing transcendentalists, and they didn't instruct Hiranyakashipu in demonic mindset, but by his own actions, right? By his own actions and his own propensities, he continued to nurture the modes of passion and ignorance, which were strong to a point where it was impossible for anything else to come through in terms of instructions or anything else. He was very powerful, and he was also very fortunate in many ways to have that power. Srila Prabhupada talks about it, right? He says one time in one discussion, so some discussion about Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of England at that time. And Srila Prabhupada mentioned that Queen Elizabeth is a very pious person. And the devotees were somewhat perplexed and confused to how Srila Prabhupada is saying that. So one disciple told Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada, Queen Elizabeth eats the meat of cows. How can she be considered a pious person? And Srila Prabhupada responded that she's very powerful. She's famous. So if you look at the opulences she has, she's rich, very fabulously wealthy. She's very famous. She's very well known for. She's very famous. She's also very beautiful, good looking. So she has all these opulences. She has many followers. So she has all these opulences. And you cannot get any opulences without the mercy of the Lord. So the fact that you're enjoying opulences means that you are fortunate to be blessed by the Lord. That's why you must have had some pious activities at some point, whether this lifetime or prior lifetimes. Of course, in this lifetime, despite your pious past, you may not be living according to that standard, which may be true in your current lifestyle, which you will pay for in subsequent lifetimes and whatever. But the fact that you have this opulence means that you have piety somewhere in the past. So Hiranyakashipu came from that background, but because of his inability to overcome the modes of material nature, the situation was no matter what the instruction was, he would never be able to accept it. And Srila Prabhupada also points out that he's addressed by the word Shri. Uh, Shri is used for Lakshmi Devi also. It's a name of Lakshmi Devi, and it's also used as a honorific address for a person. So you would not just call a person by their name. You would, in Vedic culture, you would address them as Shriman or Shri so and so. Right? And so in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we address people as so and so Prabhu. We don't just call them by their name, just as a, or we can even add Shri as an address, or Shriman. Actually, Prabhupada would always call us Grihastha disciple, Shriman so and so. So that is a cultured way, a Vedic way of addressing personalities. Even though Hiranyakashipu may not be exhibiting the characteristics of a very high class person, but the Vedic tradition was that uh, you address them with the level of respect they have, because ultimately every living entity is connected with Krishna, even including people that we don't personally like are still connected with Krishna. So when when you see this pastime being narrated by Narada Muni is addressing Hiranyakashipu as Sri Hiranyakashipu. So we learn from that is the way of the acharyas. So we follow the footsteps of the acharyas. So even when we address individuals, we should be careful how we speak to people, how we address people, so that we offer them the right respect, right? And I will summarize with this one point that I'd made last time I spoke. Also, was on this modes of nature and how we overcome them as devotees, right? That of course we're living in the material world, although we are practicing sadhakas. We're still in the material world. We're still influenced by things in the material world. That's just reality. And so the way we insulate ourselves to a great extent is by this three-legged stool, three processes that are fundamental to our spiritual life. And I spoke about uh, sadhu sangha seva, which is one, sadhana, which is the other, and the third is sadachar, or proper behavior. So sadhu sangha is, and seva is association of devotees. So we keep ourselves in the association of devotees. Uh, we spoke about that last time as well, where we heard about what kind of association this is good association, and then perform service. So we're all very fortunate to be associated with the holy place, Gita Nagari, where Radha Damodar is the center of the community. Srila Prabhupada personally came to Gita Nagari. So many great Vaishnavas lived there in the past and continue to live there. But so many great Vaishnavas came and lived. Our Bhakti Tirth Maharaj was there for so long, and then there are other Vaishnavas of our tradition have come and spent time in Gita Nagari. So Tirthapada Seva hai, when great personalities actually come to a place, that becomes a holy place. Uh, so Gita Nagari, we call it Dham for that reason. So we have the access to Dham, we have access to Radha Damodar, and so appreciating the community of devotees and performing seva, because unlike materialists, simply getting together for uh, parties is not how we associate. We associate by performing seva. That is the association that is Vaishnava association. So materialists may get together and they may speak about material topics and have gatherings and so on, and it's good for devotees to get together. But then the real association is when we come together, perform seva, and hear and chant the holy name. That is the association. So all without the seva, association becomes meaningless. The seva has to be there, which will then increase our ability to hear and chant as well. And then sadhana, our spiritual practice, which we do ourselves, which is the reading and the chanting of the holy name and so on. And then ultimately good behavior, sadachar, exemplary behavior, not just good, but exemplary behavior as a Vaishnava. So these three things help insulate us from the onslaught of the modes of material nature. So I'll stop here. Essentially, you'll read more about how Hiranyakashipu personally tries to kill Prahlad and how Lord Nrsingadev appears so wonderfully. So we're all eagerly waiting for those verses to be read and discussed. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, or any additional points anybody would like to discuss?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for your class. I was thinking about your comments about Queen Elizabeth and her piety. Srila Prabhupada, on other occasions, mentioned things like this, that sometimes his disciples would speak disparagingly of the President of the United States. And Srila Prabhupada said, you should not criticize. You have to be respectful, because a post such as the presidency is understood to be representative of the authority of God. And even the individual that holds that post may be a rascal or a demon. Nonetheless, they have to be somehow special. They have to have the favor of the Supreme Lord in order to assume that position. And in any case, merely because they are holding that position, that office, they should be respected as the representative of God, because they have that authoritative position. The authority itself, any authority, is ultimately coming from Krishna. Anyone who holds a position of authority, they may not be actually acting directly on behalf of Krishna. They may be a rascal, but the power, the authority, is coming from Krishna. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada warned us not to be disrespectful of individuals who hold a powerful post, regardless of their personal behavior. They may be rascals, they may be demons, but we should still be respectful because of the post that they are occupying. At least that much, if not directly respectful of the individual who somehow had the sufficient pious credits to be able to rise to that platform. At least they should be respected for the post that they occupy. By one means or the other, they should be respected and not disrespected. That was Srila Prabhupada's instruction about such matters. There's something else I wanted to mention, but it's slipping my mind at the moment. Perhaps it will come to me later. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Are there any other questions or comments this time? Okay. There are no other questions or comments. We can end here. Thank you. Hare Krishna.